I would like to introduce our Chupeau, the head of ventures from the Baobab network in Kenya. Welcome. We also have Denise Domfe from the Africa Center, the Trust and Foundation Officer. And we also have, we have Adam Jagich. Am I pronouncing your surname correctly?
Jagich.
Jagich, please forgive me. Investment advisor from Chandaria, capital Kenya. I welcome all of you here today. So the way we're going to go about things today is going to be super informal, just hearing more about your own experiences, your advice and some emerging trends. So it would be great if each of you could introduce yourself in a way that people get an understanding of your career trajectory and also what you're doing right now. So I'd like to begin with Denise.
Okay, so my name is Denise, and so Farida, where would you like me to start? With my background?
Oh, however you wish. So everyone has the freedom to share whatever they wish. Please go for it.
Okay. So I initially started off studying for my degree in psychology, and then from there I met a parent that wanted to start a community group for children that had autism, and the aim of the community group was to make sure that children with autism left with skills. So we started music projects, we started art projects, and as I was studying psychology at the time and I knew that students would need to get experience, I just kept telling people at uni that we're doing this project and I'd like them to get involved. So psychology students started getting involved in putting the sessions together, and then we applied for funding, and we applied for funding from National Lottery, and they gave us £10,000 to start running these sessions. So from then I decided that it was something that I'd like to go into, fundraising. So putting together applications, writing the projects, the need, just basically what we were going to do with the money if we got it. So from then I started looking into how you become a professional fundraiser, and I saw that there was the Institute of Fundraising. I'm based in London, so I decided to apply for a course, and that was a certificate in fundraising. And from there, I started applying to work at different charities. So then after completing the course, I had enough theory and knowledge of what it goes into fundraising and what a fundraising team should look like, and what things are needed for a fundraising team to flourish. So I started working at different charities. So I worked with AMREF, I worked with the Brain and Spine Foundation, and now I'm currently at the Africa Center, and we are putting on projects for the diaspora in London and trying to connect with people on the continent to deliver projects for the community. So that's a bit about me.
Brilliant, thank you, Denise. Art, it would be great to hear more about you.
Art or Adam, sorry, Art, yeah? Sure. Yeah, so my name is Art. I'm from Cameroon, though currently living and working in Nairobi, Kenya. My background sort of mostly finance-ish, investment banking-ish. I genuinely didn't like, but it was fun to do it across New York City, London, and Singapore. So kind of acquired a fairly good understanding of how the world of finance works globally. The focus was for me to move that knowledge to some extent to the continent. So for the last 3 years, left New York and moved to Kenya and worked initially in private equity. So mostly like impact investment, focusing on Francophone Africa initially with an impact investor. Done that for about six months or so. Quite like the experience because you you're able to understand the challenges SMEs, so not startup, but SMEs face in Africa. And there's many of them. I don't think this call will last otherwise. But long story short, I felt like, I think the way I'm made, the way my nature is probably to work even at the early stage. So if you look at the value chain of an entrepreneur, then I really wanted to go very early. So I think I was looking for various options. And one of them was the Baobab network, which is where I work now as a head of venture. Essentially what we do here is to invest early into tech startup across Africa and invest and help them on two things. One is capacity growth, and two is access to more funding. So our model is a bit different than most. We don't have a core program. What we do is sort of about bespoke. So we typically have a 1 week on the ground or remote, where we'll work with the founders and the funding team to really understand the business. Then we provide a bit of pre-seed funding of about $25,000. And then we assign sort of what we call a venture partner, so someone from my team that really work closely with the team to help them on their venture roadmap. In exchange of all of this, we take also 10% equity stake into the business and really set the team to be investor ready, so that hopefully the likes of Adam and Chandaria, for instance, can come and invest into one of our startups, right? So if you think about the value chain, I'm sure Adam will talk about what he does, but we go quite early on purpose to make sure that we build what we call a pipeline, an investor-ready pipeline for the likes of venture capitalists, sorry. So yeah, I think that's hopefully a good summary of myself. On the fun side, I love DJing, I love dancing. Indeed, I'm from Central Africa. Some would say I have the moves. Can't show them on the court, so don't ask. I'm also a big fan of Manchester United. There's still some Manchester United fans, indeed, and I'm one of them. But yeah, I'll stop there. Any question, feel free to ask, of course.
Fantastic. I'm jealous. I haven't got the moves. Really fantastic information that both of you have shared as well. Adam, I'd love to hear your history.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of with you. People can say that I can't dance. No one will ever say that I don't dance. Hi, my name is Adam. Born and raised in New York. Fell in love with Africa super early. I was in Ethiopia when I was 19 years old. Just found this magical location that was just amazing. And my background is a proper consulting background. I have advanced degrees in archaeology, human evolution, human origins. And while doing my doctoral research, I started a charity with a trading arm, you call them in the UK, which basically helped small cultural organizations around the world access funding. We actually started one of the world's first global fundraising platforms, crowdfunding platforms for cultural heritage organizations, museums, think tanks, small scale projects dotted around the world, so that they could not only showcase their projects, but also basically shake a can in front of the rest of the world and say, oh, you've been here, you've liked this location, why don't you leave a little money so we can investigate it further. I fell in love with the world of business from then. My wife and I moved to Lagos, Nigeria, where we spent 3 years. And then I really dove into the startup culture of West Africa, which was just full of incredible energy at the time. People were doing incredibly innovative things, just solving real world problems. And that was one of the things that drew me very much to the startup culture, was that there's the term, I think, Art, you mentioned it, as far as, impact investing. Impact investing in Africa is something totally different, I think, because everything that moves the needle on any problem a little bit has an impact on the continent. It really does. And what we in the sort of West say impact investing is slightly different, I think. And then I got involved with helping startups privately very early, just getting them sort of investment ready, getting their brand right, getting their sort of stories together, making sure they had all the documentation they needed, and then would sort of help them craft their message and story to pitch back to investors. I did that for several years, and then sort of all across Southern Africa, and then found my way onto the East Coast in Chandaria capital, where I sort of helped them with tech and tech-enabled investing, and focus sort of on those two aspects, and also the media side, where if a company pitches at them, I bring that sort of expertise to the table and help them evaluate the business as it comes through the door. I am a huge New York Yankees fan, so I guess Art, you and I have a bit of a soft tie there. So then, and as far as the sort of the rest is concerned, I'm really excited to hear the panelists this afternoon, and really excited to see what conferences like this can offer young founders, and excited to see the products that you guys are bringing to the table.
Thank you. A common theme that has come about through our discussions is that there are so many innovative ideas on the continent. However, some startup founders really don't know where to go to develop their ideas, or perhaps that there might be some governmental structures in place that really hold back the development of the organizations. So I would like to direct this to Adam and Art, but also Denise. We've been in discussion. You were on the continent, you were in Ghana a couple of weeks ago. So your own experiences, what are your thoughts on this? And what advice would you give to founders? So I'd like to begin with Art.
Sure. So I think how to go about this. Well, what makes a good ecosystem, right? That's really the first question. A good ecosystem is it starts indeed from the basic infrastructure that the government can provide, which is education. Maybe for tech, which I focus on, is STEM education, but education at large. That's one component. Another component is to have enablers. In that, I'll add the likes of incubators, some accelerators, right? To really make sure that the idea someone has from, say, a university, which is back to the government, is nurtured. So, and then perhaps a third layer is obviously the the investors, so, right, from very early to later stage. And I think maybe a fourth one is back to the government, back an enabling environment to make startups to help them thrive, really, right? So I'll say if you have an ecosystem where these four pillars are there, and there's more, then you're at good start. On the continent, unfortunately, it's not always there. Depend on the country, depend on the region. But to answer your question, I think it's important that founders in Africa don't go into the vibe of, oh, I'm a founder, I'm a startup founder, etc., right? The reality is that people that build solutions, they need to make sure they're solving a big problem in Africa, and solving a big problem for a market where there is a solution. So saying that there is a market is fine. Saying that you're solving a problem for a market is fine, but what we need to see is like people are paying for that solution. And that's very important, because that's the difference between the West and Africa, whereby in the West, you can create a need. So, you may have people, but here you can't. You need to solve a problem. We need to see that people are paying for the solution. In terms of where to go to, I'll always say incubators. That's the job of incubators, right? A job of an incubator in Africa is to make sure they kind of nurture that ideas, from I have an idea to, I'm building something, or I know where to go to build something. I think incubators have a bad rep on the continent for various reasons. I think I'll say some I agree, some I disagree. The one I agree is that the people in incubators needs to make sure they understand what's next. Not only they need to have this entrepreneurial background, but they also need to understand what does an accelerator need, what does an early stage VC need. But they also need to understand what is the lingo, what's the term sheet, what's market, what's go to market. So all that educational needs to be given to founders as early as possible, so that even for someone like us at the Baobab Network, we see an organization that actually have some good fundamentals. We see governance, we see some idea of processes, idea of building a team, right? Because that's the issue. The investor readiness is not about us African, we don't have ideas. It's like, can we bring investor ready businesses? And, at different level, that investor readiness, right? For Chandaria Capital or Adam, it's going to be different than when we want to go in, just because we act a bit earlier. But the point is, even when we act as early, we need to see a bit of infrastructure. But I think incubators will be my go-to place, whether they're like private, whether they're from a university, right? But yeah, that'll be my few cents in 2 to 3 minutes.
Thank you. I saw Adam nodding his head. Do you have anything to add to this?
I think Art really just summed it up very, very nicely. There are, and I think basically to distill it one step further, there's no lack of ideas or passion on the continent, like absolutely not. And that pillar system of the ecosystem that you set up is absolutely right. You need every part of an ecosystem in order to have a functional and healthy environment, whether it be from the idea to those that nurture the idea. But those stages that you were talking about, the incubator, what's really important is that the incubators themselves have the commitment, the knowledge, the expertise, and also the ability to amplify that message to investors and take it up that next level. The greatest idea, if it stays quiet and I never see it, it will never get funding. And then having the ability to adopt, that's the first thing that any investor at any stage is going to look for. Are people paying for your service? Are they willing to pay for your service or idea? If that answer is yes, great, we will move you along and we'll go down the pipeline. If that answer is no, let's figure, incubators are the spot where you can sort of test and figure out why. Is it because I don't have the right platform? And especially with Africa, where the tech is leapfrogging so fast, is it the UI UX? Is it what's, people are going into very heady problems very quickly with startups, which makes it incredibly interesting to operate in. But I think, in general, yeah, having those fundamentals instilled into founders, startups, and the ecosystem as early as possible will help secure funding for founders, much more rapidly.
Thank you. And Denise, I'd just like to adapt that question slightly. What advice would you give to someone who wants to set up a charity? And also, what advice would you give to charities right now? I know that COVID has really had a devastating impact on some charities, especially in the UK. What advice would you give them in terms of funding as well, and creative ways they can go about it?
Okay. Well, in Ghana, what I saw is that the power of networking is so strong. I think you can't underestimate how important it is to just talk to people. So I would say for people that are looking for funding, they should definitely talk to people that have had funding before. So even if you go to co-working spaces, there's iSpace in Ghana, there's Impact Hub. So if you're around co-working spaces, go in there, talk to people, get to know how they got funding, and talk to people in universities, lecturers, just talk to people and find information out. I think, people are so open to being connected in Africa, and I feel that that's a really good way to start getting information and start building information. In terms of getting funding, there's the Charity Commission. So they publicly display information about different funders, so people can go there. In the UK, there are community hubs. So there's voluntary action services that people can go to in their area to see what funding is available for different projects that they have. So if you're in a certain area, I would say look for the voluntary action service in your community, in your borough, and just get in touch with someone there, and they can direct you to where you can get funding. There's also platforms that people pay for to sign up to. So there's also Charity Excellence, and they have funding pots that you can apply to. So just the power of networking is amazing. And then also just going on to the Charity Commission, and just talking to people in your community that have set up charities and that are getting funding, and finding out how they went about getting funding. So talk to people, I would say.
Fabulous, thank you so much. My next question is, how do founders get their organizations investor ready? What steps do you take them through, Art?
Sure. So it's there's a lot of noise these days about acceleration in Africa and the way organizations go about it. You know, typically with a co-op program, 20 people in for 3 months. I think at the Baobab network, we've never done that because we understand the way the ecosystem is built. We have to go bespoke. And the reason I'm saying that is because it has to be bespoke. It really varies. A startup founders in Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria, is very different than a startup founder in Kuna or Port Harcourt or Abuja, yet they're still in the same country. And then if you take that founder or that funding team compared to, say, a team in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, or in Cairo, they're all very different, and they come at different stage. The skill set internally is different, you know. The ecosystem they are in is different. So, for instance, for a funders in Ethiopia, a lot of it is to reassure the investor. That's one layer that has to take in consideration when you do the fundraising. Same thing with Zimbabwe, for instance, right? And sometimes it might mean incorporation abroad, as simple as that, and suddenly everything is cool. Sometimes for some team is to make sure that if you are into the logistics space, maybe you have a strong traction, but actually, I think we want to see someone really strong into operation. So maybe you need to have that key hire that not only reassure the investor, but make sure it makes sense for your business to grow, right? So typically what I tell people is startup in Africa, they have many skill gap around product, around growth, around operation, right? And then I will add data as well. So for us to make these teams investor ready, we make sure that we help them in terms of capacity growth in those particular areas. Once this is done, typically they are at the stage where they attract VC funding, right? So it really is about filling the gap, and it really varies. Like we have 15 investments at the moment in our portfolio across 8 geographies, and they all come at different stage. Some all have strengths, some weaknesses. Our goal is to maximize the weaknesses and the strength and help them on reducing the weaknesses, right? And it really varies. Like I say, again, it could be incorporation, it could be a team, it could be helping them on a product, sometimes just on a product development. Sometimes it's their pricing, unit economics doesn't make sense. So there's no one solution. I mean, it's the best answer I can give you, unfortunately.
Thank you. And over to Adam, what are investors looking for?
I think, yeah, it was funny, Art, that you talked about the strengths and weaknesses. And I think one of the things, being a founder myself, a former founder myself, one of the things that founders that I absolutely love, and one of the things that I love more than anything about African founders is you back yourself, right? You really back yourself up, and you have to, because this is something that you've got to live and breathe. Like, this is like starting a company is not a day job. This isn't something that you're going to do and because you want to work less. You're going to start a company, and I need to see you grinding. Like, I definitely need to see that. But the thing I wanted to touch on and sort of expand upon that Art said, which makes me very comfortable at a table when I hear somebody, is a founder admit to the operational weakness of the organization. When they can tell me we're missing this person that brings that skill, that means to me they have such a deep understanding of their business, their market, and the ecosystem that they can identify where their gaps are. I love seeing that in a talk, because if you're going to pitch to me and you tell me all about the strengths and how good it is and how good the traction is and how, fine, but I'm not investing in you today. I'm investing in you 3 years from now, and I need to see a plan between now and then. How are you getting there? What are you trying to focus on? What's the next steps? What's the next 6 months look like? The next year look like? The next 18 months? And being able to identify the critical weaknesses of the business, that is something that to me shows, again, a deep knowledge of the operation of your company and the market and ecosystem as a whole. And for me, that is truly ready. You are ready to sort of get get some funding, because then I know where the funding can be directed, and I can sort of help advise on the portfolio management side. Once you come under the wing, or Art, once you take them in and you send your teams in, where to focus as somebody who is helping that growth, where you can say, okay, we're missing this key skill set. Great, let's start looking. Who do we need? What do we need? What do they need to do? And what does that look like? And what can they bring to the business? And how are we attracting that person? Or in case of the unit economics not making sense, okay, what can we do? Is it a supply chain issue? Is it something that we can can we cut the costs of manufacturing, for instance, or do we have to increase our pricing or change our pricing model? All of these things, like having that understanding though, really to me sings readiness. And if you come in painting the sky gold, fantastic. Thanks for your time. Yes, but and I think the thing that we always love to see as investors is realism. Like, be real and be realistic with your valuation, be realistic with your approach, and be honest and open with your weaknesses, because everyone's got them, and that's okay. It's okay to have them. Like, no investor expects a business to be 100% ready from the moment that I'm introduced to them for the first time. That's okay. Own it.
Thanks, Adam. My next question is, what advice would you give to a founder who really, for example, they really need a CTO, but they don't know where to go to, or if someone is starting up a charity, they want to expand their team, and they're feeling a bit lost, what advice would you give them? So I would like to ask Art.
I'm on mute, indeed. Yeah, I think we actually write a lot of articles on that, so I can share some of these links here if you want, or anywhere else. But it's very important that founders understand the stage they're in, and based on that, understand the amount they think they need, and based on that, go to the right people to ask the money. And because, if you go to a bank today and you're a startup, the bank's not going to give you the money for a lot of reasons, right? So I think the question was around where to get the money, right? Just make sure I answer.
It was more so, how could they find someone to join their team? But also what you're sharing is also valid as well. I really want to hear that. I know that some people want to know, where do I go to get funding? So let's go with that.
Okay, and then the other question was around how to build a team. Yeah, okay, sure. So yeah, on the funding side, it's very important to know which stage you're in, how much money you need, and then based on that, where to go to, right? It's very important to understand when you go into a VC or even an accelerator that provide funding, or anyone, you go into a relationship of some sort. So like a relationship, I'm not a dating expert, but you want to know the other part, right? You want to know what they can bring to you. So it's just normal to understand that, okay, I might go with that organization. Let me see if it makes sense. Are they offering equity? Are they offering debt? Which kind of debt? Which kind of equity? That's very important. What's their timeline? What kind of business have they invested before? Et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of questions. Investors do due diligence on the startup, and the startup should also do due diligence on who are the VC. And the due diligence is not just at the business level, it's also at the personal level, because the VC is a people-to-people business. Yeah, that's also the other reality. So it's very important to know who you're talking to. In terms of building teams, yeah, I think teams and talent always going to be a challenge in Africa. But actually, I think the way I look at it is like, you may need to have 2 or 3 people in the team that are really can drive the business and bank on building up the junior roles, sort of, right? The problem with that is that the way VC is set in Africa, it doesn't give you that time. When the money comes in, the expectations are very high for people to deliver. Hence, you don't really have time. So yes, you need to have that guy that nail operation right away, that person that nail growth right away. Unfortunately, with the kind of funding that you can't pay for that talent. So it's going to be a challenge because the talent is there. I mean, I'm in Nairobi. There's a lot of very good school. There's a lot of very smart people, very smart individuals. Sometimes they have no experience. Sometimes they have 1-2 experience, but still they might not have that kind of experience that a VC putting 2 million or $500,000 needs, right? And to me, it's a fine balance between getting that type of funding and having people understand that things take time in Africa. So yeah, I don't really have a core answer to the team, except that, you need to give it a bit of time on the continent. And sometimes you might not see like Harvard level kind of education, but that doesn't mean that these people can't deliver. But perhaps Adam has more to add to that as well. Sure.
Yeah, I think from, to get back to the original question of how do you find the right people for the right roles? Yeah, I think Denise absolutely hit it on the head. You've got to network, talk to people. And you've got to find that person who's willing to, yeah, as Art said, maybe accept a slice of the company, as opposed, you need somebody who's going to be willing, especially in the stages of art where you guys get into, you need somebody who's going to be willing to buy into the long-term vision of the company, like growth, like, okay, great. And they want to get in ground level and they really believe in the fundamentals of that business, because that's going to allow them, to work those 18-hour days that you need those early founders to work, because that's what it takes. It's what it takes to build a business on the continent, and frankly, it's what it takes to build a business anywhere. But there is the talent there. Their startups, unfortunately, are competing with very, very decent either private equity funds, VC funds, banking funds, but for that top talent, and they can't afford to pay up front, unfortunately. So you've got to pay with vision, with mission, and with equity in your business, which is it's something that you're going to have to part with as founders to attract the right people at that stage. And I think Arts, you were very right in saying VC, private equity, not maybe a little bit less, but venture capitalism, it is a people to people business. We buy people more than we buy parts of companies. Because we back, in Chandaria Capital, we've done it a couple of times where we back the founder, not the business. We say like, okay, really like this person. Again, this is a family organization. It's sort of a family office, so it's a little bit different than sort of a more structured one. But we can say this person has what it takes to be a solid founder of a business. The idea is just not right. This is not right for them. Maybe let's try doing something different. Let's try getting into a different side and see where they go. But I think that's the thing is, there's just people back there. There's people behind that money, and you can reach out, you can talk to us. And there's a reason we put our LinkedIn profiles up, and there's a reason our phone numbers are attached to the bottom of our website and our profiles. Like, give us a call. I'll take a phone call any day. But, there is a limit to that as well. Like, don't slide into my DMs on Instagram and tell me how great you have a business idea. Like, not a way to get funding. So, but if you want to call up, find out what we do, how we do it, the types of businesses that I like to see or invest in, or the principles in particular, great. But that, again, going back to Denise, all of these issues are solved with networking. Get somebody who can get you a coffee with Art or myself, or get somebody who gets you coffee with somebody who just got back from studying abroad and they're heavy into tech and they're looking for something to fill the gap. Maybe you can attract them to your early stage startup, and they're the right puzzle, they're the right piece for that puzzle.
Thanks, Adam. So Denise, if someone wanted to develop a charity, let's say they're looking for trustees, but they really don't know where to begin. It's a really bad idea for someone to bring in family members as trustees. It's very difficult for them to be approved as a charity. So my question is, what recommendations would you give them? Or if they were looking to expand their team, where can they go to in the UK?
So I would say start with your network. So people you went to college with, people you went to school with, people you went to university with, or find interest groups on certain areas. So if you're interested in starting something within the sports community, go to places where people that carry out sports sessions go. So you might find them at the gym or at certain workshops carrying out certain classes. So if you have an area of interest, go to places where people in that area work and just talk to people and find out if they'd be interested in just joining you and have a good outline of what it is you want to achieve. So When you're starting a charity, you usually start with your aims and your objectives of the charity or of your community group or of your social enterprise. And from there, you have an idea of where it is you want to go and what you'd like to achieve in the long term. So have a plan of what you'd like to do. And then I would say the most important things that need to be covered are having a secretary, having someone that can deal with finance, a treasurer, and then maybe someone that is good at just helping you certain processes, making sure that certain processes are there for your organization. And so that's 4 people. So you have your founder, which would be you, your treasurer, your secretary, and then maybe someone that just assists with the processes and just reaching out to people and contacting people with you. So yeah, I would say start with people you know and people you've worked with. You never know, just ask people if they've got free time to get involved.
Thanks, Denise. Art raised a point that people actually need to do some background research on VC, VC firms. So what kind of things do startup founders need to look at? And I'll direct that at Art first.
Adam, you want to take it or I should go first?
Yeah, I mean, I think when people, I mean, it's flattering when someone comes to a meeting and knows who we've invested in previously. And not necessarily it's about the amounts, and it's really interesting for them to ask, like, oh, I see you backed this company, you know, what attracted you to them? What was it about them that helped you raise money? You know, those are the types of questions. So obviously the sort of the sector or industry that the VC focuses on, some are very refined, where they say, okay, you know, we focus on specifically this thing, whether it's fintech or, you know, logistics or supply chain or something like that. Others, like Chandaria Capital, are much more agnostic, and, you know, sector or industry doesn't really matter. Stage matters a little bit, you know. So if a VC says, okay, we are sort of an early stage or a growth stage, you know, if you're just in the concept part, you know, it's not a right fit. So then, you know, okay, it's going to be a no, basically, if you come with a concept stage company to a growth stage investor. But knowing and understanding what sector and industries they've backed in the past, why they've backed them, you know, and better understanding that really helps. I think it's something that shows you've done your work, shows that, you know, maybe they have a geographic restraints where they say, okay, I only do investments in East Africa, or I only do West Africa, or I'm a global, you know, it's about good ideas, you know, understanding those sort of key features. So I would say geography, stage, ticket size, sector, industry, you know, those are the questions that you want to be asking. Then you want to, you know, once you have the initial pitch and you start to get involved, you know, then it's more about, you know, what terms are they more comfortable with? You know, are they terms in debt? Are they equity? Are they, you know, sort of convertible notes? You know, how do they deal in terms? What's their timelines like? You know, a lot of founders will come in and say, okay, I need $1 million in 3 months. Like, it's probably not realistic. You know, you're probably looking, you know, to sort of delve into that kind of money and that kind of ticket size. You know, it's a long due diligence process. You know, the companies have to check. These aren't just piggy banks that people are sitting there going, oh, I just can't wait for that next company to come and tell me they need $1 million. Like, no, like, we're doing work back here. Like, we're diving in deep, and, you know, we're looking at your financials, and we're checking your government, you know, all of the background stuff to your business. You know, we're checking the fundamentals of the business. And that takes time. And it takes time in Africa. And I know there are companies out there who are trying to minimize that time and trying to sort of build an ecosystem or build a play in the ecosystem, which provides accurate information on companies, which is great. You know, companies that like if you're into somebody like Art and they pass up the line, you know, that makes that process a little bit shorter, because we trust companies like Baobab. You know, we trust institutions like that who are working and operating almost as a clearinghouse. So, you know, that makes the due diligence a little bit less. But yeah, asking us what we like to invest in and why is a very interesting question that frankly we love to talk about. So yeah.
Thanks, Adam. I mentioned that this session is going to finish in approximately 4 minutes time. So I just want to finish off with a couple of questions. My question to the panel is, have you come across some startups or charities that you feel are really creative, innovative and impactful? Which ones have you come across this year? Who wants to go first?
I'll go with.
I don't want to go. I've got another question.
Pass.
I'll go with where I work. So I'm working at the Africa Centre, and we are providing space for people that are doing things in the community. Where right now we're building, refurbishing a block. So we've got a gallery space in there that we're refurbishing. So we've just got funding to host at least 6 artists. So 6 artists, African from the diaspora, to come and show their work. So we're hopefully having that running next year. So right now we're still developing the space. We've got a contract with a restaurateur, another Black business, so they'll be providing food, and our aim is to have rotating restaurateurs on the site. So it'll be a Pan-African offering. We're developing an education floor, so that will hold archives of the Africa Centre and what it meant to people in the 60s that were coming over to the UK. It was a place for them to just relax, feel safe, and there's been so many monumental people that have come to the Africa Centre. It was opened by Kenneth Kaunda and Nelson Mandela. He had speeches read from here. So we're just trying to preserve that history and make it accessible to people in the UK. So we've got funding for that as well. So hopefully we'll have archives to share in the next couple of years. So yeah, those are some of our plans, and yeah, that's what we're trying to do for the community. And also we have an arch, so people come and use the space to hold events. And we also have Colourful Radio, who are tenants of ours, and they Black British radio station, and they have DJs on 24/7. So yeah.
So great things happening at the Africa Centre. Thank you, Denise. How about you, Adam and Art? I would ask you the next question. So
I think yeah, for me, there's a couple of really interesting spaces operating at the moment. Obviously, medtech, biotech is first and foremost on everybody's mind around the world, and really interesting stuff coming out of East Africa with that at the moment. You know, sort of, I think Africa's cooling off on fintech a little bit. You know, people have been around it. And then there's really interesting, and what I really love to see is like these amazing local or regional brands that are coming up and coming out and securing small amounts of funding, but are really, you know, driving, you know, local African flavor, like regional African flavor for a regional audience, which is really, really interesting. So I'm thinking more of like, one of our recent ones was sort of Kenya Originals, which is a sort of a hard cider snacks and food brand that's coming out of East Africa, you know, that are doing really, really interesting flavors for local palates, which is sort of an interesting, and I think you're starting to see that sort of more regionalized manufacturing to sort of acquire local tastes. You know, Africa sort of looking at the continent, you know, as sort of diversifying the way it always should be considered. You know, it's not a place, right? Like Africa's not a place. It's many different communities operating with many different sort of wants and needs in different market spaces. And there are now the capacity is there to provide these localized products. And I think that for me is really interesting.
Thanks, Adam. Art, would you like to share more on any emerging trends or startups?
No, I think yeah, we all have various. Yeah, we can move to the next question. I think there's many sectors exciting on the continent. There's those that will bring money and will be exciting to VCs, and there are those that will take a lot of time, yet are more deep impactful. So yeah, one I really like these days, COVID has helped, is all these mental health, online mental health kind of platform. We've talked to a lot in Ethiopia. We've seen a few as well in Nigeria. And mental health is it's a bit of a taboo thing on the continent. So whenever you have organization like that breaking through and actually validating the model, not just the impact, but also the fact that there is a commercial way to make money out of this sort of. It's always a bit exciting because yeah. So if I have to mention one, I'll mention that. Yeah, but there are many others.